you're playing for one of the biggest clubs in the world. You've won the Premier League at 21. Your manager has said he could be one of the greatest players to ever play for United.
That penny just dropped straight away that we win every game at this football club. Every game.
Do you think social media abuse aimed at footballers is getting better or worse?
Worse. No way is it getting better. You know, for years I used to just head down when you're walking through crowds and stuff. I didn't want people to spot me, and it just got to the point where enough was enough.
This episode is supported by Huel.
Phil, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I'm so pleased to welcome you to High Performance. You're someone who so many people have an opinion about, but I want to hear from you. Like, this is sort of your platform really to share your own story. And I'd love to start by finding out where you're at today. Like, tell us about the Phil Jones that sits in front of us right now.
Yeah, it's been a sort of whirlwind of a career. It didn't end the way I wanted it to end. It was difficult for me towards the latter stages of my career, especially. But I'm fine. I'm doing fine. I'm mentally good. I'm physically good. And I'm looking forward to the future. I'm positive about it.
We speak so often on this show about the fact that the one thing we do control, right, is our reaction to the world. So I'd love to know your reaction to your career. Is it one where you think, I'm unfortunate because without injuries it could have been so much more? Or do you reflect on your boyhood club, 12 years at Man United, over 200 appearances for one of the greatest clubs in the world, so you actually feel fortunate for the career you had?
It's a good question, to be fair. I think I fluctuate between the two quite regularly. There's certain times I'll walk down the street or I'll wake up in the morning and think, if only I'd have been a bit more fortunate, or if only I'd have been a bit more stronger up here than I was towards the latter end of my career. If I'd have had that towards the latter end of my career, throughout my career, I think, I'm not saying I would have been an unbelievable player, but I think I'd have been a top player. And it's unfortunate I didn't have those tools back then to deal with certain aspects around the game. And but then on the flip side, I do look at the moments that I've shared on the pitch with some of the great players, the managers I've played under, the trophies that I've won along the way, and to think back as a kid thinking, I never even dreamt, it's beyond your wildest dreams of playing for my boyhood club Blackburn was the best thing that could have ever happened to me. My dad used to carry me over the turnstiles, and you'd sit there at half time with the cup of tea and a biscuit and watch all the players that you grew up watching, and then to think that I would make my debut for Blackburn was incredible. And then to obviously go on to play for United and have a career at United, maybe didn't play as many games that I would have liked, and everyone is aware of that. But then I do look back and think, yeah, I'm proud of myself. I'm proud of where I come from. I'm proud of who I am today.
So why do you go to a place of mental health, not physical health, when it comes to reflecting on your career? Like, I put down the issues in your career to physical injuries. So why do you question whether you were mentally strong enough?
Well, I think the physical injuries made me mentally weak at times. It made me question myself. Obviously, people will ask, he's always injured and he's always out with this and that, and it's as though that they think that I wake up one morning and think, oh yeah, I fancy being injured today. Fancy going in and just saying I'm injured. Like, I'm not that guy. I'm professional. I'm honest. I'm humble. I don't take myself too seriously. And I tried everything I could. I left no stone unturned, and I gave everything I did for whichever shirt I wore, whether it was Blackburn, United, England. I can sit here now and say I gave absolutely everything I could.
So what did you not know that you wish you had then about mental strength?
I think the middle point of my career, after Sir Alex left, United went through a really tough patch. That transition period that everyone talks about, we're going through a transition period now. The older lads are, your likes of your Giggses and your Scholeses and your Waynes and your Rios and Vidas and Patrice Evra's there, sort of coming towards the end of the career at United, and it was a transition period for us, and it was up to us then to step up and be those guys. And I think it was when social media started to form, and you start hearing things, and as a kid, I think you come into the team, whether it was at Blackburn or United, and you just didn't care. You just went and played. You just went and played football like it was in the park. For the first 2 years at United, especially, it was just like, I didn't, any of the noise, external noise, you didn't even notice. You wasn't aware of it. Even if it was made aware, you wasn't bothered. It didn't affect you. And I think gradually that started to affect me a little bit more mentally. And I think anybody who tells you that it doesn't is lying, because it does. I think any footballer at any stage or level of the career will or whatever level they're at will tell you the same thing. And as footballers, you have to put this mask on, right? You're footballers, you get paid a lot of money, so you're not allowed to have feelings or emotions or whatnot. So it's difficult. It was a difficult time, but I slowly started to work on that, and you know, my performances began to improve and get better. And I was aware of that, and I started to find myself again and understand who I was and the values I had to the team, and what my importance was within the dressing room. So yeah, it's been a roller coaster. It really has. Yeah. But you know, I look back now and I honestly wouldn't change it for the world, because that was my career, that was my journey, and I'm proud of it.
There's an incident, Phil, that I remember that it was a really innocuous performance, but I remember thinking what you're saying there fits into it. You were playing Spurs at home against United, and it was when Van Gaal was in charge. And I remember one incident where you went to pass it back to the keeper and you hit it really hard, and it nearly resulted in an own goal. And it wasn't.
Don't remember that one.
No. But I remember saying, like, to me, it was somebody that was lacking confidence. That, like, the very evidence of a simple task. Yeah. You'd almost over-elaborated on it. And I remember thinking then at the time that there was something going on for you, that you're describing as some of these challenges. What did you learn that have allowed you to be able to rediscover your own talent?
I think for me it was controlling the things that I can control. Anything that I can't control is out of my control. I can't change. I can't change the pathology of people's reasonings or people's opinions, or it was just me adapting to the environment I was in and being able to be more aware of that. This is it. This is the situation I find myself in. Deal with it. Deal with it. If people want to criticise you, deal with it. If people want to say nice things about you, no problem. But just try and keep everything on sort of a level. Sort of. I never tried to. You know, when I was really good in games and I come off the pitch, I was so like level. I didn't want to take myself to that level, because I knew that the next day you could be lower than a snake's belly, and that in football or in any sport, you know, it can change like that within the flick of a switch, and you've got to be able to adapt to that and deal with that. And as footballers, you get paid a lot of money, of course, for something that we love to do, and you're expected to deal with that. And I did. Everyone finds different coping mechanisms. Everyone has different rituals before the games, headphones, or people sat in the dressing room just not even making eye contact, or everyone has their own way of dealing with pressures and dealing with external pressures. And
what was yours?
I like to stay really silent. And that was probably my downfall. I didn't open up to anyone. I'm not saying I was struggling towards, you know, ridiculous amounts. You know, I had problems just like anybody else has problems, and I always say that my problems are no bigger than somebody who works in an office or just on a different level or a different platform. But my coping mechanism was to be silent, be very, you know, put my guard up, my shield up around with my really close family. Even my friends I wouldn't really communicate with that well, and people would know there'd be something wrong because I just wouldn't get back to them, or I wouldn't talk, or it'd just be literally my wife and my kids. And that was it. That was just my way of dealing with it. Tried to stay off social media, but you're always getting your friends who are going to fill you in on what's happening, or he said that, or you can't allow him to say that. That's disrespectful. And what we're supposed to do? We're supposed to just, if we bite back, we get involved in a spat, or if we say something negative, then you're in the back page of the paper. So, you know, I like to think throughout my career, I went under the radar in terms of the media, and I tried to stay really like swerve my way around it. I didn't want to do anything that would promote myself even more. You know, as a footballer, your life is very open. Everybody knows everything about you, everything to do with you. So for me, behind closed doors, that was my sort of safe space, and that was a space that I didn't allow anybody to come in.
What if one box could change your running life? We've partnered with Huel, who've put together a running bundle to help everyone find their own version of high performance. It includes 8 Black Edition ready to drink, 8 Huel complete nutrition protein bars, 6 daily A to Z vitamin drinks, a free t-shirt, some running socks, and an extended trial on the Runner app. It's the perfect bundle to get you started on your running journey. So don't miss out. Grab your Huel running bundle worth over £100 at huel.com/running by clicking the link in the description. It's really interesting, isn't it, that, you know, when we talk about a young footballer, we talk about have they got the ability to pass the ball and find space, and have they got good lungs, have they got a good engine, right? And actually, when you get to the top of the football tree, suddenly all the things that all the skills you're telling us that you need to be a footballer at the top level, and none of those things, it's like the ability to almost deal with the madness of being a Premier League player, right?
Yeah.
So people will listen to this and go, what's he talking? It was hard. What's he talking about? It was hard. He was, as people do, he was earning good money. He was doing what he loves for a living. So would you just put this kind of conversation to bed for us once and for all? When people talk about the mental challenges of being a footballer, like what was going on in here with the self-doubt and the fear and whatever else you were feeling?
Well, I think I go back to when I said I was young, and you play without fear, and, you know, having the courage to go and get the ball, and you know, you make a mistake. I think I heard Pep saying it the other day he was saying the best players in the world have the ability to lose the ball continuous amount of times, but they don't care. What they do is they go and find it again, and they'll do it until something comes off. And when I was a young kid coming through at Blackburn and at United especially, like, I'd make mistakes, but it didn't matter. Like, it didn't affect me in my head. It didn't affect anything to do with me. But as you grow older and you're more mature and you're more wiser to what's going on around you, it does affect. So absolutely, it's an enormous part of the game now, and it's much more documented now than it was, say, 10 years ago when I was coming through, which is good. But yeah, listen, it's difficult, but I'm not here to get the violin out and everyone feels sorry for footballers. No, that's not what I'm trying to say. But it's understanding that just because these players are getting paid so much money and, you know, they're playing football, they're in the public eye, like, they have feelings, they have emotions. It's just, they have problems, just like we all have problems. So we can't discredit theirs. But it's unfortunate they're not allowed to give their voice and their opinion because, you know, they've got a team behind them that's saying, don't say this, don't say that, don't do this, don't do that.
That must sort of be hard, not having the voice, like almost feeling a bit helpless. Like, what do I do then?
Well, as a footballer, I always say you don't have a voice. You can never, you know, when you hear interviews at the weekend or you hear stories in the paper, like, and you think, do people read it and actually honestly think that they're telling the truth, or telling their story, what they really feel? Because they're absolutely not. And there's so many times throughout your career where you have to bite your lip in certain situations and just ride it out, just go with the flow. Things will, you know, be tomorrow's chip paper, as they say.
Can we take you back to signing for United, though? Because I always think it's significant that you talk about this freedom of playing, and Ferguson allegedly spotted you in that 7-1 defeat when you were playing for Blackburn and went, I need this kid. So can you tell us about how the process of leaving Blackburn and joining Manchester United came about?
So I think it was towards the back end of 2009, 2010, I think it was. I'd played really well for Blackburn. I was playing midfield at the time. Just a young kid, loving playing football for his boyhood club, enjoying every minute of it, no fear, no pressure, just putting on the shirt and going. I remember just playing for Blackburn and then coming home and going playing five-a-side. That was the sort of feeling I had. So I knew it was coming. I knew my time was coming to end at Blackburn, and I knew there was a lot of clubs sniffing around. I knew, you know, obviously I signed for Man United, but there was, you know, Chelsea, Arsenal. I met with Arsene Wenger. I met with David Moyes. I met with City, a few of the representatives from City. Who else? Harry Redknapp rang me. So I was fortunate. I had a whole host of clubs. I could have chosen anyone.
What was that like?
It's just crazy because I was so used to my own. You're in your own bubble as a kid, and you just to hear the voices of these people, and you know, I was so nervous going around to these people. Kenny Dalglish, I met with Kenny in his house in Liverpool. So I met with all these people, and then the only club that didn't ring me or speak to me was Man United. Excuse me. So I'm in Dubai with my wife, well, my girlfriend at the time, now my wife. We're in the morning. This was before we had kids, and an unknown number rings me.
You're on holiday.
I never ever, yeah, on holiday. I never answer unknown numbers. I mean, that's one thing I've changed now because you have to network now. You answer every call now. And then it rings me again, so my wife's like, you're going to have to answer it. So I answered it, half asleep in bed. It must have been 8 o'clock in the morning. And this voice comes on and says, Phil, Sir Alex here. I'm not going to try and do that again.
Did he call himself Sir Alex?
I can't even remember.
Go on, sorry, let's stop.
And I've literally shot out of bed, so my girlfriend, my wife's going, what's going on? And then he just said, he basically along the lines of, we'd love to have you at the club. Like, I've loved watching you. I know everything about you, and I'd love you to come out to Nice, to come and see me and have a chat with me. So that was it. Put the phone down. Flew
what
back.
was he doing in Nice?
So he was on his holiday at the time. So they just got beat. It was the season they got beat to Barcelona in the Champions League 3-1, where Messi's. I think they absolutely battered United that game as well. So I went out to meet him in Nice with my agent David Gill. Went on a little private plane, which again for me, being on a private plane, I'm 18-year-old, going out to see Sir Alex on a private plane. Met him in his house in Nice or wherever it was. I think it was Nice. And I remember being so nervous. Like, I've never felt nerves like it. And I went to meet him. So my agent's gone upstairs with David Gill, and I'm sat having a conversation with Sir Alex like this. I'm absolutely bricking it. And he didn't ask me for half an hour, 40 minutes, I promise you, he didn't ask me one question on football. It was, how's your family? How's your mum? How's your dad? What were your grades like at school? I was just like, is he going to ask me a football?
And how did that make you feel?
Relaxed. Made me feel so relaxed. And it wasn't intimidating as you thought it would be. Now I've met with other managers and it's been quite intimidating. I'm only a young kid at the time, obviously. But he made me feel so relaxed, even though I'm still on edge a little bit. So he asked me all these questions about my grades and my scores and all these other things. And then my agent came down. Then he started to talk about football a little bit. And I watched you in this game. And, I love your passion for the 7-1 you made reference to. And then at the end, I remember the last thing he said to me, and it still gives me shivers now. Like, he said to me, he looked into my eyes and he said, Phil, are you a winner, son? And I was like, yeah. I said, in my head, I'm thinking, where do I sign? Where do I sign? And I was meeting Arsenal literally 3 hours later in London. I was flying to London to go and meet Arsene Wenger. And I remember I came out and I just said to my agent, like, I don't want to go. Like, I'm done. I've made my decision.
Why?
And it was just the aura of him, like the presence of him, like the way he carried himself and the way he explained and sold the club to me was just like no other.
Did you ever go and meet Arsene?
I did meet Arsene. I just found a great man. Everyone I met, by the way, was brilliant and accommodating and spoke really highly of me, which was great. I just didn't feel. I always say it's like walking into a house. As soon as you walk into a house, you get that feel straight. You don't have to see the rooms. You know straight away that's the house for us. And it was just that feeling. And I just came back and that was it. I went to meet Arsene Wenger and I had to make the decision because I was flying out to under-21 championships the next day. And funny enough, at the same time, Jordan Henderson was actually signing for Liverpool. So me and him were having a conversation and he was saying, I'll sign for Liverpool. And I was like, oh no, come over to United. But obviously nothing ever happened in terms of signing for the same team. And yeah, the rest was history.
So those questions Ferguson was asking you about, like your parents and your school grades and things like that, what do you think he was trying to find out about you?
My mentality, how I was as a person, how I carried myself. Because I don't think the reason why I was there, because he never had any doubt about my attributes towards football.
Yeah.
But he wanted to know what I was like as a person. And I think today, I have ambitions of going down the coaching route and going into management myself. And I think that's such a huge and critical part about football these days. Like, time's moved on now. I think you have to understand every single player. And every single player has got their own goals and ambitions and been on their own journeys. And it's about understanding every individual. And for me, Sir Alex was the best at that. He knew exactly every individual person in that group. He knew where they were, he knew what they were getting up to, he knew everything about the family, and that is so important. And I think that's sort of been lost in translation in the last few years, and not just at United, but I think just in football as a whole.
And it's one thing getting to understand a player. It's another entirely different thing, and probably the most difficult thing, creating a winning culture. So I'm so interested to know what happened after the summer. You've gone to the Championships, you come back, you're a Manchester United player. When did you realise the standard that was expected at that place, and how was it relayed to you that this is the Manchester United way at that time?
I think I arrived from the Under-21 Championships. I flew with, it was me, Chris Smalling, Tom Cleverley, Danny Welbeck. So I already knew a few of the lads from the Under-21, so that made me feel a bit more. We flew out to Chicago, I think it was, and I remember landing at 3 a.m, and the amount of fans outside the hotel was ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. They're just waiting all night just to get a glimpse of somebody. And I was like, wow, like, is that every time you travelled? It was like, yeah, like, get used to that sort of thing. And then I remember having my first training session, and I remember being, again, just so nervous, but itching to do so well and just impress these lads. Like, I've grown up watching these players, like all these players I mentioned before. I'm like, I've idolised them, do you know what I mean? Like, watching them grow up and playing in the biggest games and biggest competitions. And I remember I gave a few balls away in the start. We were doing like a little possession drill. And I remember Sir Alex pulling me during the 4-minute drills we're doing. He just said, "Don't worry, son." He said, "You'll get used to the pace of it soon." He said, "Just keep doing what you're doing." And it was just, the tempo was just like no other. Like, I'd never experienced that. The level, the intensity they trained at, the tempo of the session, and the demands that those senior lads expected and demanded of you was just so high, so high.
And so what were the senior players like with you then, in terms of integrating you into that culture?
So there was some who I would say who was really engaging and took me under the wing, and then there was some who would do the same but test you in other ways, but they wanted to test you on the pitch. They wanted to know if you was good enough.
Give us then a few specifics about how the standard was set, because I remember talking to Owen Hargreaves, who I worked with for a long time, and I said, "Your first memory of being a United player?" And he said, "I remember a game where the whistle blew at half-time and I started walking towards the dressing room, and one of the other lads went, 'Don't walk. You don't walk to the dressing room, you run off the pitch at United.'" And he said that was the first tiny example of creating a winning culture. I'd love to hear some from you.
I think the one that sticks out in my mind was playing Stoke away early on in the season. We were winning 1-0, and I think they equalised in the last minute. But in my mind, I've still got Blackburn mentality. I've not been there long enough, even though I know the standards were higher than, I'm not disrespecting Blackburn, but they were higher than them. I got back into the changing room afterwards, and I remember sat next to Rio or someone else, and I was like, it's all right, like thinking, point away at Stoke, tough ground to go to. And he was just like, "It's not good enough here, mate. That's not good enough here." And I was like, I couldn't process the information. Like, on the bus and after the game, I was thinking, like, "I've got a point away at Stoke. What's it mean? That's a tough ground." And it was just that sort of penny just dropped straight away, that we win every game at this football club, every game. I know obviously times have changed and so on, but that was just, it was such a winning culture and winning mentality in training. Like, I remember we used to do old v young on a Friday before a Saturday game, and my God, they were more intense than the actual game on a Saturday. Like, you did not lose. You did not lose that game. They were so intense. The tackles were, some of the tackles, like, if that happened now, you'd probably scrap the game. You'd probably say, "Lads, in you go." They were so intense, and you know, the more experienced lads always knew how to win the game. It was mad. We'd always get beat, but we'd always push them right to the wire. We had beaten them a couple of times, but they would always find a way of winning. Even when we were 3-1 up, they'd always find a way to win. But those were some of the moments that you think, yeah, incredible.
And did you ever have a moment where you thought, "I belong here"? And if you did, when was it?
I think I made my debut officially for, take out the pre-season games, when we played the Charity Shield and was 2-0 down to Man City at half-time. And I came on at half time and we ended up winning 3-2. But that's not the reason why.
It was part of
it. was part of the reason why else. So we ended up winning 3-2. And I think it was at that moment when we won and the fans on the pitch and you're picking the shield up at the end, I was like, yeah, I'm here now. Like, I'm here. And then the first game we played West Brom away, and Vida and Rio both got injured on 60, 70 minutes. So I went on for the rest of the game in that game. And then because I don't think I went there, I don't think Sir Alex had in his mind that I was going to play so many games so early. But because we had both of our main centre-halves, Rio and Vida, who were out injured, then you sort of thrusted into the starting 11. So I played against Tottenham the week after, and that was like my debut. And then obviously Gareth Bale, there's a big talk about Gareth Bale and how well he was performing. He broke onto the scene and he was flying. So it was like playing against him, and I remember I made a few block tackles against him and got back. He beat me once and then I got back and made a block, and the crowd were erupted because it's the first time they'd seen me at Old Trafford. And you know, those fans, they just want to see you playing with passion. You know, I know like United, they've won a lot of things and they've got a lot of DNA and a lot of history, but they just want to see passion. They just want to see someone who's going to give absolutely everything for that badge. And I know that should be the case at every club and blah, blah, blah. But if they see that they will back you all the way.
And I'm sure lots of United fans will be listening to this now in the context of United not now being at the level they were at then. And the popular question is, how do they find the days that they had under Sir Alex Ferguson? So I'd love to hear from you, your abiding memories of the daily things that Sir Alex did that you think created the winning culture there. I mean, like buying good players is one part of it. But there's loads of clubs, including Man United, including Chelsea, including many others, with good players that aren't winning things.
I think he just knew how to get the best out of everyone. Like,
how?
So before the game, every game, he would go round, literally, player by player, whoever was starting, he'd go round and be like, for example, Phil, he said, Phil, you're playing against him today. Like, look what he's doing, look what you're doing. Like, that's why I signed you. Like, forget about him. Like, he's nothing compared to you. Like, look what you've done this season. Look at the games you've played. Like, he would make you go out 10 feet tall. And where, like, people have said in the past, like, you'd already won the game, it was like the manager had won the game for you because he'd given you that much confidence, so much confidence going out onto the pitch. I remember, like, I just never felt like you was going to lose. Like, you always knew you was going to win. It was a crazy feeling. Like, it's hard to really to put into words how mad it was. Like, he would give you so much confidence. Everyone, you could see everyone was so engaged in the changing room before the game, and he'd lift everybody with so much confidence. Even the lads who were maybe not played as well in the previous game. Just the spirit we had and the energy he brought to the, you know, as soon as he walks into the dressing room, like, everyone's ready. We're ready. Like, you don't have to shout.
What's that moment like when he walks in?
I always say, like, as a manager, like, you have to command that respect and you have to earn the respect as well. And obviously he did that. But he just, when he walked into the canteen or the dressing room, or it wasn't like a school thing where the head teachers walked in and you sat there like that. You just knew he was in the room.
So it wasn't a fear thing?
No, definitely wasn't a fear thing. Like, just an aura about him and a presence that, like, you knew he was in the room. Like, it's time to talk. It's time to go out and do business. And he just gave you that confidence and that energy and just, yeah. Like, I can't, it's hard to describe. It's hard to explain. Like, but walking out on that tunnel at Old Trafford, under Sir Alex, there were very, very few times where I thought, we're in trouble here. We're in trouble.
So you've, like, your first 2 years there are almost like a lesson in contrast, because your first year, we lose the league on the last day to City, and you're up there at Sunderland watching their fans celebrate, was getting beat. And then the year after, we win the league.
2013.
Yeah, with some style. What would you say your experiences was of those 2 years, and what was the real difference between the 2 years?
I mean, the first season was really hard to take. We was 10 points clear at Christmas, 12 points clear at Christmas, and we managed to lose it on the last day. We won't talk about the last day because
no.
I mean, as soon as I hear that comment, and I'm not even going to say it, as soon as I hear the commentator say that, like, I used to switch it off.
Tell it off.
Like, I could not listen to it.
For what reason?
Because it hurt.
Just pain.
Because it hurt that much. Like, that was my first season. Like, we should have won it and we didn't. And it was ours to lose and we lost it.
I'm going to tell you a secret that I've noticed about high performers. They are laser focused on the power of the gut. You heard me right, the gut. Because the gut and overall health are intrinsically linked. And that's why so many high performers take a probiotic. And one which keeps on being discussed is this, Biotic by Heights. Like, I've been taking it for over a year now, and it is so good. It's one of only 3 products in Europe that's Informed Sports certified. That means it's taken by Olympians, Premier League footballers, Guinness World Record holders, international rugby players. Quite simply, this is gut health for champions. So master your microbiome and treat yourself to a high-performing gut for a high-performance lifestyle with 20% off your first month. Just go to heights.com/HP or enter the code HP20 at checkout to get 20% off and start seeing the difference that Heights could make to your health.
And I'm not saying, like, obviously it should never have got to the last day anyway. It should never have got to the last day. But that was painful.
And
Painful.
what was said in the dressing room when you come back to him? You're at Sunderland, you come in the dressing room, you're dealing with the
That's
desolation.
a good question, because you can judge a culture not by the great moments, but by the hard moments, can't you?
I remember coming back in and I remember everyone was flat, so flat. I'd never felt that experience before. It was a weird one because, you know, you lose games at Blackburn or whatever, and of course it means a lot to you. I'm not disputing that, but to lose it in that magnitude for Man United with the DNA and the history behind the club was tough to take. It's a real dent in sort of your ego as a club. And I remember coming back in, and I can't remember the exact words, but it was, "We'll be back. We'll be back, and we'll make it happen." And that was it. You went on holiday, you come back, and the next season was just so determined to put it right. And every game, all the talk was, you can't let that happen. What happened last season? We can't allow that again at this football club. You cannot allow that to happen and repeat itself. And we just grew game by game. And to be fair, I think there were times in that season, 2013 season, where we didn't actually play that well, but got the result. And there was other teams dropping points, and, you know, again, it was ours to lose. But, you know, I remember that game at Old Trafford, under lights, 5 o'clock kickoff against Aston Villa, to win the league.
Season, yeah.
And when Waz has played the ball, 40-yard ball to Robin van Persie, he's watched it over his head and volleyed it in the far corner. Like, I can't tell you, like, it gives me goosebumps now. Like, I can't tell you the feeling. Like, it's impossible to put it into words how good of a feeling that was. And knowing you had 30 minutes left of the game, we're 2-0 up, and you'd won the league. It was...
How old were you?
2013, I would have been 21, maybe.
So you're playing for one of the biggest clubs in the world. You've won the Premier League at 21. Your manager has said he could be one of the greatest players to ever play for United. Fabio Capello's compared you to Baresi. Charlton's compared you to the great Duncan Edwards. You must have thought at that point, like, I don't think life gets better than this.
Yeah, that was a real highlight of my career for sure. To win the Premier League for Manchester United was... I never even dreamt of that. Do you know what I mean? To make my debut for Blackburn was the best thing, but to go on and win the Premier League for Man United and to do it with the players I played with and the manager was incredible. But yeah, those comments was... Again, I go back to, you're a kid, you're still young, you're still learning, you're still a bit naive, and you don't really take those comments on board like you would do now. And yeah, it was great at the time, and people are comparing to this player and that player, and it's amazing, don't get me wrong, and it only fills you with so much more confidence. But I don't want to say it was a hindrance, because it can't be a hindrance, but it certainly added a lot more pressure on me, because people then are listening to those great people, like unbelievable, Sir Alex you just mentioned, Fabio Capello, and listen to those greats, and they're listening to what they're saying. Whatever they say, people take note, because they've been there, they've done it, they've seen players come through, they know exactly what it takes to be a player. So I think it gave everyone the perception of sort of the level that I was at and should get to. So definitely put more pressure on me, for sure.
And how did that show up, that extra pressure?
I think obviously when Sir Alex left, that was a big turning point at United, turning point for a lot of players, especially for me. It was always going to be difficult for David Moyes coming in, anybody coming in. It was always going to be such a mammoth of a task. You had players who were aging in that team and the young players coming through, and how do you manage it? Do you change anything, or do you try and stamp your own philosophy and cultures you want to create? Or it was hard. It was so hard to get the right balance, and I don't think any. I think I have so much respect for David Moyes, like for taking the job. And
What did he get wrong though?
listen, David Moyes is an unbelievable man. Like I've got so much respect for him, and I went to meet him as well before I signed for United, and what an unbelievable his job had done at West Ham, and then he's gone back there and wins the Europa League, Conference League, unbelievable. But it was an incredible task for him to get right, and you almost felt sorry for him, you really did. And it just didn't work out. And
when did you know it wasn't going to work out?
I think when the lads maybe questioned the signings we made,
right.
I think that was sort of the lads basically saying that's not where we're at.
It was Fellaini that came in, wasn't it? That
Felly come in, and do you know what? Felly was brilliant. Felly was brilliant, and he played every game under Mourinho. And you don't play Mourinho's team unless you're a good player. You just don't.
Sure.
So Felly was a top player. Used his abilities well, and do you know what? At the time, it's probably what we needed. We needed something different. But obviously, players would question signings, and you can start seeing fractious relationships around the dressing room. And I've seen it before. It's just a downward spiral from there. It just doesn't happen. And we kept defeat after defeat and losing games to teams we should never be. And you've got to remember, we've been so used to winning things and so used to the history of the club I've mentioned, and it's a pattern that was forming that shouldn't be forming.
So as an aspiring coach, what would you do when that spiral starts? How would you fix it now?
Back to basics. And start understanding and start looking at yourself and understanding why are things going wrong. Don't be blaming the players. Don't be questioning things in the media. Like everything stays out of the media, like everything's internal. And question yourself, and what can I do to get the best out of these players? Not go in the media and start saying this player, we need this signing, we need that signing. No, how do I as a coach improve this squad? And I stay silent. I'll back the players, and I'll never say a bad word about them in the media. What happens internally stays internally, and we deal with it, and we come together as a group. And any problems that people might have, we're grown up, we're adult enough, and we'll quash them and move forward. But I think when people start questioning things in the media and start speculating, and nobody puts it to bed, and it's a losing battle.
And you've mentioned fractious relationships a couple of times, and I'm not going to ask you to name names because that isn't right. But what we are interested in on this show is how people can learn from your experiences, right?
Yeah.
And many people in their own business lives and even at home at times will have this issue with fractious relationships. Why were they so poisonous to a football culture when some people don't get on?
I think it's egos, and I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. Like, everyone's got their own ego, everyone's got their own personality of who they've been and the player they've been and the levels that they've got to. So it's more of looking at other people in the dressing room and you're thinking, well, I should be playing. Like, I'm this is what I'm about. Move. And it's trying to understand where those relationships are forming in the dressing room and catching them early.
Yeah.
Because if you don't catch them early, you're done. And I've read so many things, and the things the areas that I want to go into now as coach and management, and I read loads of things and listened to loads of things, and the one thing I'll take away is that it only needs one person in that dressing room to make things bad.
Yeah.
to make the situation a whole lot worse for you than it should be. And that causes relationships to break down. It causes, people are sitting, collecting, they might be sitting at the table at the dinner time separately, and people might think, oh, what does that have to do with it? Has everything to do with it, And it's about catching those moments early and understanding them and recognising them, and how do you deal with it?
Can you feel it spreading?
Yeah. When you're in a situation as a footballer where things aren't going great, there's fractious relationships within the dressing room, the management, it's a really, really tough place to be. And you'll try, and again, we spoke about it earlier off camera, how like a player will come out in the media and not in front of the media, but will say things just to tick things along and kick the can down the road, and they don't really say what they think. And people who think they say what they think, trust me, they don't. There's a lot of things going on deeper that they would love to say, but you can't, and you never have a voice as a footballer. You're not allowed to say this, you're not allowed to go there, you're not allowed to do this. But it's a tough place, it's a tough environment to work, and I've been involved in dressing rooms like that.
Did you ever go to the manager with some of these observations?
I think the more experienced ones did, and the more experienced ones would try and help in certain areas. But then there's managers who will say, "Well, no, this is what I believe, this is what I think, and this is the way we're going." And you respect that. You have to respect that. The manager of the football club.
And of course, this is all against the backdrop of injury starting to rear their ugly head for you. So let's talk about your experience at this point. When did you first have issues with injuries in your career?
At Blackburn. It was under 18s at Blackburn. My knee kept clicking and then just kept locking, but then would unlock if I wiggled my knee around a little bit. And I remember the lads used to laugh at me. And it was a bit embarrassing, to be honest. Like, the lads are laughing at you because you're down in a heap and you think, what the bloody hell's that? And then it'd go, and then it was a bit of moment talking about. I remember Sam Allardyce got sacked, which was incredible. Should never have got sacked. We're sitting 8th in the league, doing really well for Blackburn, the budget that we had in the Premier League. And then Steve Keane took over, left me out the squad, easiest one to leave out, youngest player. There you go, you sit on the bench against West Ham, came on, and I remember tried to block a ball from Carlton Cole and my knee just locked, just completely locked. I was thinking, oh my God, I can't straighten it. It's just locked like this, like a 90-degree lock. Anyway, got in, I tore my meniscus, went to get the surgery, repaired my meniscus there. Fast forward 2 years, signed for United, messing around at the end of training, went to try and whip a ball in the top corner, done the same thing again. I then knew what it was. I hopped into the doc's office and I said, I'm gonna have to have surgery again. It's done the same thing. That was like, because I was doing really well at the time and I was in a really good place, a really good moment. So I went to get it repaired again, but the surgeon said that it couldn't be repaired and it had to be taken out. So you obviously have your meniscus that sits between the top of your leg and your bottom of your leg, and that's sort of your shock absorber and your cushion. So then I had I had no lateral meniscus, and they always say doing your lateral meniscus is far worse than doing your medial, because everything sort of falls on that side and compresses down on that side. So from then on, I got back, felt great, and this was under David Moyes era, Van Gaal era, Jose Mourinho era was started to really affect me every time in training. Under Van Gaal, I would say. In 2015, I would say it really I started to notice it a lot more. I would train, my knee would swell. I'd be on compression boots, I'd be on the ice, I'd be in the pool, recovery, trying to get every inflammation down. And the pattern would keep forming and forming. I would start getting really, really sharp pains every time you passed the ball because it was just the lateral compartment closing down.
So every time you passed the ball, it hurt?
Incredible amount of pain. Do you know what? When I look back now, I think wow, I give myself a pat on the back for getting through those periods. And what I did best was hiding that. And, players and staff knew that I had sort of a bad knee, but I hid it really well. I would never put the team in jeopardy. I would never do that. Like if I wasn't fit enough, I wouldn't. But it got to the point where I was having washouts. I got to the point now where I just hardly any meniscus at all. So it's just bone on bone. So every time you went to pass the ball, it would just be bone on bone. Every time you jumped and try and land, I would always try and land on my left foot and always try and take off on my left foot. If the ball got spun in behind me on my left shoulder, I would be fine. But if it was my right shoulder, I'd have to be prepared for it. So in the end, I actually preferred playing on the left-hand side because the ball whipped down the side, it's easy to get to.
When you say be prepared for it, what, be prepared for the pain?
Both.
Or?
Be prepared for the running behind because you've got to be smart enough now because you might feel a little bit of discomfort. Honestly, the discomfort used to be, I don't want to bore people, but yeah, I used to be in really bad pain. It got to the point where I was having that many anti-inflams and that many strong anti-inflams. I remember I played a game once and then I lived not far from the dock at the time. I remember I got home, wife's in bed, and I just sat there and I'm just in the most severe pain. I couldn't stretch my stomach, I couldn't sit up. But the amount of anti-inflams I used to take before training and games, just to get myself through training, I used to dread training and little boxes at the start because any little sharp movement with the ball used to just, the amount of pain was just, it just used to try and get through. Every day was just a battle just to get through training, get to the games at the weekend. And then it got to the point where literally the doc would inject my knee before the game so that you just couldn't feel it. So like, I remember being at Brighton away and I was on the bench, but I remember someone was injured. Well, struggling, so centre half, can't remember who it was at the time. So I was making sure that I was ready and being proactive. So rather than thinking I'll just do it at half time in case I come on in the second half, I'll be proactive, I'm doing it now. I remember just as the manager at the time was going to do the pre-match talk, I'd go into the cubicle and then the doc, because I didn't want anyone to see, because it was embarrassing for me. I didn't want anybody to see me, one, struggling, one, in pain, because I was supposed to be this tough guy and, you know, put my head through everything. And so the doc would inject my knee and then away I go, and then you just can't feel anything for a couple of hours and then just deal with the consequences at the end of the game if
and what were they?
Something. Well, if you can't feel your knee, so if you ruptured your cruciate or you did something like that, then you'd find out probably 4 or 5 hours after the game. And listen, people will say, like, why are you doing that? Because I love the game. I loved being on the pitch. I loved being with the lads. I loved playing for Man United. I'd do anything. And I'd do anything now to go and do it all again because it was my life.
But you hinted at the start, Phil, around some of the mental demons that injuries does. There's research that says that for athletes that have a fear of doing an injury, the likelihood of that injury recurring goes up by something like 12 times. When did the fear and the anxiety and those demons start to emerge in your head?
Probably in 2015, like I said, when it started to really get gradually worse and worse. You're always out for a couple of weeks with your knee. And, you know, I look back at my career and the injuries I had. And yeah, I had a couple of other injuries. I had an ankle, ruptured 2 of my ligaments in my ankle stupidly. Played in the Bernabeu, that great game when we drew 1-1 away and Danny Welbeck's wheeled away, his celebration. Great game, great occasion, played well. And then stupidly on the weekend, before we played them in the replay, I dangled my foot out like this and then someone's clattered me and then I'm out for the game. But other than my knee, really, I only really had a couple of muscle injuries throughout my career. So when people say like I was injured a lot, like granted they were right, but it was only my knee. And it was something that I couldn't do anything about. Like, what was I supposed to do? I couldn't change the pathology of my knee. I couldn't do anything about it. I'd seen surgeons, I'd seen specialists, I'd had injections, I'd had cocktail of injections and steroids and I did all my work in the gym. Like, I was so professional. I would get in early, I would leave late, I would massages, therapy, I did absolutely everything. But it just got to the point where enough was enough. Like, I'd been through that much rehab and that much trauma mentally that I felt like, and I just had kids and 2 beautiful girls, and I just couldn't sort of put them through that again. Like, it was unfair on them. Like, I had a life other than football, and that's sometimes what people forget as well. Footballers do have a life other than football.
Tell us about you say the trauma mentally.
Yeah, I mean, I think like people would and I said before, like you'd be thinking of something in your head to say if you're walking down the street and I was walking towards someone or someone was with the group of lads and a bit boisterous and you're thinking, oh, he's going to say something. I was always a step ahead and think, go on, say something now and I'll say something back. And people who know me know that I am not that guy. I've never been that guy. I'm humble, I'm down to earth, I'm honest. I'm a loving guy, I don't hate. So for me to be in that state was hard, and you'd go past people in the street and it'd say something, and it'd really, really aggravate you and get to you. But again,
like what were they saying?
You just hear people whispering, "Oh, there he is, fucking injury prone. He never plays for Man United. He's just picking his money up." Or
right,
and you think that's hurtful because if they knew what I was doing behind the scenes to get right and to be available for selection, but. Yeah, and then people say, well, you shouldn't take that money then, you should... So then I'd flip that on the head and say, well, I'll tell you what then, what I'll do is I'll take the money away from you and see if you go back into work. Do you know what I mean? Like, everybody's got to earn money. Just because it's football, everybody has their own way of living and their own life, but it was tough.
What did you do when you were with your wife and kids?
Because I tell you what was really tough for me is that I found it really hard to go to like restaurants and my wife would say, oh, we're going to go out, leave the kids at home today, we're going to go out to this restaurant. I'd be like, nah, I don't want to go there. I know that area and people might go there, or I like to go to places where I knew I could sit in a corner, or, for years I used to like, just head down when you're walking through crowds and stuff. I didn't want people to spot me, and yeah, it's tough. It was tough.
How does it feel now?
Oh, I'm completely, I've worked so hard to get right here as well as physically, and I'm in a really good position, really good state, and I'm just a...
Would you expand on that though? Because I think there's a lot of people that listen to this podcast feel that having their own tough times, maybe not on as grand a scale as what you've just described, but getting yourself better here is something that lots of people want to understand. How do I do it?
It's tough because, people don't want to, as we're sort of strong human beings and we puff our chest out and, we go about our daily life and everything's hunky-dory and play football and everything's nice and cosy. But in reality, everybody's got their own problems behind closed doors, everybody. And that's where, as a manager, rather than saying he's not good enough, maybe strip it back and say, why? Is there something personal going wrong? Is everything all right at home? Is everything all right with the family? Are you feeling all right? You've got to accept it. You've got to accept the situation you're in. It's not like this, but I'm trying to give the analogy. It's like an alcoholic. You've got to accept that you're an alcoholic. You've got to accept that you're an abuser of something, and go through that process. And it's not quite like that. I know it's not on that scale, so that's really a bad analogy, but I just had to accept who I was and where I was at in my life, and accept that I needed to change, not just for football purposes, because I wanted to get back and show people like I'm still the player I was when Sir Alex Ferguson signed me. I know I've got it. I know I've got it in here, but it's about finding that again and how to find that again and how to find that within me. And I think when I had both of my girls, that changed my mentality. Like I was doing it for them then, and they hadn't seen, for 2 or 3 years, they didn't, 2 years especially, they didn't know what Daddy did. You know what I mean? They didn't know Daddy, they thought Daddy just went to work and came back and had a normal 9-to-5 job. Like, they didn't understand what I did, and that was sort of painful for me to see, because I wanted to show them the life that sort of I'm trying to give them and what I was about.
Because you weren't playing, you mean?
Because I wasn't playing.
That moment where
there wasn't a moment. So like I think there was a moment where I played against Wolves, came back against Wolves, not played for 12 months, near enough. And that was such an emotional day for me, because it was the first time my girls really got a chance to watch. Well, my eldest got a chance to watch me at the time, and she's in the crowd and clapping and hearing your name, and just all those things that people take for granted because they're available and they can come and watch them every week. But because I've been out for so long, like, it was so difficult. But that was so emotional.
We've got the clip of you walking off against Wolves. I'd love you to tell us what you think when you see it.
Yeah.
Like, you look very emotional.
Yeah. No, it was because because seeing your family in the crowd, like, and knowing what they've been through with you, and knowing the challenges that you faced to get to that point, and knowing how much that means to you and me and the family, that was so tough. Like, so emotional. I remember my wife's crying, my mum, my dad, and yeah, it's tough.
So let's go through these moments then. So you've got your injuries, you're having injections, you're trying your best to play. I saw an interview you did once where you said, I felt so full of shame that I couldn't even talk to my teammates. What did you mean by that?
Well, you're not helping them. You're going into training every day. How's your knee? How's it today? Yeah, it's all right. Well, what do you think? What do you think it's like? I've been in for the last 6 months, like, and it's again, like, I don't hate on them. Like, they're only trying to help and want to know, but I was like, I can't help you. I can't do anything for you. Like, I felt embarrassed. Like, I felt embarrassed walking into the club knowing I was just going in for treatment every day. It's embarrassing. Like, I never wanted to be that guy on the bike waiting for I'd come in, I'd literally wait and I'd instruct the physios that I'm coming in when the lads go out to training, so I didn't really have to engage and see them, because I didn't want them to say, how's your knee? How are you getting on? Well, I tell you how I'm getting on. I'm not doing well because my knee's not great, and I sort of knew then that it was just, I was running out of time. And that hurt to come in. And I remember, you know, we just moved house, and this nice, beautiful house. We'd walked in, and, you know, my wife, when we won the Premier League, she got me like a replica trophy, and I'd got all my England caps, which I was so proud of. But I walked into the house, and I had this like little trophy cabinet, and I didn't want them up. I didn't want them up in the house. Like, I felt almost worthless, that like I didn't deserve to have them up in the house because I'd not worked. It was a weird feeling, like I didn't deserve to have them up in the house. And it was only 3-4 months later when I came back and they were up and my wife had put them up, that you look back, and when I was in a better place, and I was like, you know what, I'm proud of that. I'm proud of what I've done.
Why were you being so hard on yourself though? Like,
because I'm critical of myself.
It's a physical issue that you had though.
Because it's just pressure, the external pressures, and the pressure that I put on myself. Like, I am my biggest critic. When I play football, I don't need Joe Bloggs to tell me whether I played well. I don't need Joe Bloggs to tell me whether I should have cleared the ball, headed the ball, tackled the ball, played this pass, or I know the game inside and out, and I played it for long enough to know and evaluate my own performance. And I don't blow smoke up my own backside when I've played well, and I don't, you know, I know. And I was my own critic, and I just felt like I didn't, at the time, I'd been out for so long, and it was so drawn out, and I put my family through, you know, they have to go on the journey with you through the hospital beds and the rehab, and it was just a tough time. I didn't feel like I warranted being able to put them up at the time, and I purposely said, you don't put them up.
So how did you learn to treat yourself with a bit more kindness and compassion?
Time, healing, understanding where I was at as a person. I forget as a player. Like, I had to understand who I was as a person, and the dad I wanted to be, and what I want my kids to grow up and look at Daddy and think like how he was as a guy, a man, who he was, how he was with other people. And I want to be able to take that and take my adversity that I've been through and take my knowledge throughout the game that I've understood through different managers and the players I played under and the competitions I played. And I want to take all that information that I've stored throughout these years and take that into coaching and take that into management. And I feel like I can really help players and really get players to that next level.
Sure. But the reason I ask that question is because from a personal point of view, my inner voice sounds similar in terms of being quite self-critical. And the question that really helped me with that was somebody said, how would you feel if somebody spoke to your son in the way that you speak to yourself? And it devastated me that anyone would say anything as nasty or as cruel as what I was doing to myself. And I'm interested that you talk about the role of your daughters coming along. Can you give us an example of how that inner voice then changed its tone?
Because I'm acting on behalf of them now. Like, I've got something to, not that I didn't have anything to fight for, of course I did, but I had something so valuable to fight for and so precious that I was going to do that for them and do that for my family and do it for myself, more importantly. And I knew I had to find myself. I knew I had to change. I knew I had to become a bigger person and just deal with it. Stop compressing and suppressing all these moments and all these, because all you're doing is just kicking the can down the road. You're not helping yourself. You're not helping your family, your teammates. Like, deal with it and learn to deal with it. And I did learn to deal with it. And I'm so much a better player, manager, coach, whatever person for that.
And you mentioned like your friendship with Jordan Henderson in the under-21s. When we were lucky enough to sit down with Jordan, a lot of it is echoing what you said, that he thought being the strong, silent type of bottling it up, don't pass it on to your family, was the way he was. And then he realised that actually it was quite selfish to do that because they were still suffering but couldn't reach out to him. He spoke about his work with the psychiatrist at Liverpool that helped him start to unbottle some of these emotions. Did you go down that route?
Yeah, I worked tirelessly with somebody. I had a lot of sessions online. We had a lot of sessions together.
What, with a therapist or a psychologist?
Both. And really, it was about, for me, I think it was the fear of the unknown that really got to me. The fear of not knowing what's going to happen next week. The fear of not knowing whether I'm going to come back and play football. The fear of not knowing whether I'm going to be able to get another job here, there, or wherever, or the fear of disappointing my family and my friends was what got me the most, because they look up to you and they respond to you and you've provided for them, and that was the fear of not being able to do that for them, and the fear of unknown. I think the fear of unknown gets everybody. Yeah.
What did your therapist say to you about your...
We spoke about the past problems and issues that I'd faced and why I felt like that and where I went wrong and how to have more self-respect for myself and it was step by step. Like I'd go into the club and then, I'd go in with a smile on my face and shake someone's hand, and that was the first step, because it was just about dealing with it. You're still Phil Jones, the footballer. You still play for Man United. Like, you're still being paid. Like, go in and do your job. And that's what I did. And slowly but surely, I built myself up. And it might be a little handshake there, or it might be me taking myself out of my comfort zone and going asking someone a question or querying someone where I wouldn't have in the past. Because I'm also thinking in my back of my mind that, God, they're just thinking that I'm just like, I'm not good enough, just injured, like, see you later. But that's me consciously thinking what they're thinking. And I used to do that a lot, thinking about what other players or other people are thinking, where they're not even thinking that. But it's me and my mind taking over, thinking that they're saying that. Hence what I said the other day when I was on about walking down the street, when you're thinking, if he says something now, like, I've got something pre-made in my head. So you dare say something, I'll say something back. Where I got out of that stage. And I remember someone said to me at the train station once, I was on the way to London. This was when I was in such a much better place. And he said, it's a shame about your career, Phil, but like, it's lovely to meet. I said, you what? And rather, the old me would have been like, oh, thank you. Where I was like, what did you say? He said, the shame about your career. I said, what do you mean, mate? I said, I've been at United for 10 years. I said, I've won the Premier League. I've played over 200 games for United. I've been and played in 2 World Cups. I've won the Europa League, the FA Cup. And you're trying to turn around to me and say, shame about your career? Like, no, mate, it doesn't work like that.
Really?
Like, and then that was me standing up for myself and having respect for myself that, no, this stops now. Like, I'll tell you how my career went, and now I can look back on it with so many fond memories and so many fond relationships I made and managers and players and stuff. And yes, of course I would have liked to have played more. Of course I would. And of course I would have liked to help my teammates more. But, I've lived the dream. I've lived the dream playing for my boyhood club, Blackburn. I've played for Manchester United, the biggest club in the world, in front of the best fans in the world. Like, how have I not been successful? Like, somebody tell me how that is not being successful. I know people, again, will say, you should have played in this game, you should have played in that game, you was out injured for this game, but tell me how that's not successful. I know a lot of people, 99% of people would snap the right hand off it now for their young kids coming through to have the career that I've had. And I've got to be respectful of that myself and pass that message on that it's okay to be fearful. It's okay to be fearful of the unknown and what's going to happen and what might happen for people coming through. They might not be good enough for this team, but so what? Go and play somewhere else. And it's having that ability to go, you know what, fine, deal with it. I've dealt with it. I've put it in the bin. But now I'm moving on to this one. And you're just relentless. You don't stop. And that's one thing about myself now is I'm just relentless. I don't give up. Like, I don't just throw the towel in. If something doesn't work for me, I don't just think, oh well, I'll just leave that one then. I'll go on something else. No, I'll find another way of getting to that. It might be a different diversion. It might be a different route, but I'll get there.
But isn't it a brilliant lesson for people listening to this that you can be in the lowest of the low moments in your life, and it's only a few years later on reflection that you realise that you will be so much better equipped for your own future because of these tough times that you've been through?
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's why I love being out on the pitch now. I love being with the kids and helping them through different problems they might face in the career. You know, these lads coming through the under-18s and the 21s and all these young players now, they're going to go through so much adversity throughout the career, so many peaks and troughs as a footballer. And you've got to be able to deal with that and be adaptable. And I'd like to think that I've got enough knowledge to pass that on and help them, not just on the pitch, because I've got a vast amount of knowledge on that as well, but off the pitch as well. And I think marrying them two up and getting the right balance between the two is so important.
So if there was an 18-year-old boy that was listening to you but could only take on board one message, what would your message about dealing with adversity be that you'd pass on?
I think to listen to yourself and listen to the people who really trust you and you can really believe in around you. Listen to those people. They're important people. And they might not be a coach. It might be your mum or your dad or your mate. Those people who you trust. And trusting people in this industry is hard. It's tough because there's always somebody who wants to be better than you. There's always somebody who wants to be stabbing you in the back because that's just the industry we're in. But listen to those people around you. Seek support when you need it. Don't suppress things in your mind, and just to be yourself and just to be present in every moment. Like, they've got such a great chance of being somebody and they're in a position where they can go on and make a good living and have a great career. But don't throw it away. Don't throw it away by turning up late to a meeting or coming out with your boots untied, get the principles right, get the basics right. And I'm telling you now, this and that will always outshine any ability you've got, and I stand by that.
And can I ask you about how the world of football dealt with what you were going through? Because, this is a world of high stakes, it's a world of high performance, it's a world where they know they're judged because of 3 points on the board. I'm interested in, I guess, in the times that you don't necessarily feel let down by the game, but you feel like you were put in really quite difficult positions by the relentless world of football.
It's never ending, never stops. There's always something that, you think you've got out of the woods a little bit and then bang, there's another story about you in the paper, or somebody's written an article about you who doesn't even know you from Adam, or I used to laugh and giggle to my mates about the people who give... it was that, actually, I'll go back to that point, actually. That was the point where I came off social media when we drew to Stoke away again. And I was picking Crouchy up from the corners. He's a big guy. So we had about 8 corners in the last 10 minutes. And I dealt with everyone, bar the last one. Bang, goal, Crouchy over the top of my head. Got caught in the wind at Stoke away. And I got onto the bus after the game. And I remember thinking, right, what post am I going to do on social media now? And I sat there and thought, you're having a laugh. Like, you've just drawn to Stoke away and you're worried about what picture you posted on social media. I was like, stops now. And I came off social media, that was it. I was done with it. Like, I put it to bed because it wasn't doing me any good. Like, I was constantly thinking about it. People have the media teams and all these different, it wasn't doing me any good.
Because people assume you came off because of the kind of mocking or the abuse. But it wasn't.
No,
It was-
no, it was that moment where I thought, I can't keep doing that. I can't do that. Like I'm playing, I'm representing Man United, and I'm getting on the bus after the game thinking about what picture I'm posting. No, can't be
Did
right.
you think about Ferguson's "Are you a winner, son" moment? Because
Exactly that. Exactly that. Like, that's not a winning mentality. That's a small-minded, weak mentality who's worried about social media and his public perception rather than worrying about winning the game. And that's, for me, was just a line in the sand. Like, that was the penny dropping for me on social media.
Let's talk about social media, because according to the Pew Research Centre, social media abuse causes negative emotions, physical signs of stress, sleep problems, difficulty concentrating, PTSD-like symptoms, suicidal thoughts, and long-lasting mental health effects like anxiety and depression, a loss of productivity and self-confidence, thoughts of quitting one's job, and lower job satisfaction. All of that from
It's a long
abuse
list.
on social media.
Yeah.
How do you feel when you hear that list?
It's correct. It's correct. I'm not going to sit here and lie, because we're in 2024 and we're still talking about racism, and we're still talking about problems like this on social media, and it's like we do things to try and eradicate it, and we're still to this day talking about it, and it's sad, but I had to deal with it, and I did deal with it, and I'm such a better person for it, and that's where I say that I'm so glad I have gone through that, because I can now offer that experience and advice to these young kids coming through. And it's difficult. Like, of course it's difficult. There's no way of glossing it up. You can't say anything more on it. It's a tough place to be at the time.
What was because I've had it on, nothing like the scale that you've had it, but as a football presenter, you just get criticised and then everyone jumps on the bandwagon. And to me, it felt like every single person was doing it. And that if I walk down the street, everyone would be going, that's the guy that... And it's not, that's not the truth, but my God, it feels
It's exactly like that.
so all-consuming, doesn't it? I couldn't even sort of think straight on the days when people were, when I was trending or people were coming for me or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know whether your experience rings with that.
Exactly what I said about like walking down the street and going into restaurants and even like walking with your kids at times. I've been walking with the kids at times and someone has said something and I'm a bit like, I get it. Like if I'm walking down the street on my own, like granted, like fill me up, like give me whatever you want because no problem. But not when I've got the kids there. Not like swearing or whatever in front of the kids. Like
last season, right, there were 60,000 negative tweets aimed at Premier League footballers in one season. Right?
60,000?
Yeah. So we all love to say, oh, everything's getting better in the world. Like, do you think social media abuse aimed at footballers is getting better or worse?
Worse. No way is it getting better. No way. I look on social media now like I'm back on it, and I've got to the point where I want to be back on social media, and I've made that choice. And I look sometimes and I think, wow, like I think sometimes that I've gone through a lot, and I look at some of the comments, I'm thinking, goodness gracious me, like honestly, like what do people do? Like just sit at home and just target footballers and want to send them abuse about the games and stuff. I don't know how you stop it. I really don't. I don't know how you...
Do you talk about it as among the lads?
No.
Is that right?
No. You wouldn't want to highlight the fact that people are talking about you negatively. No, never. Never.
That makes it even harder though, because I sort of think, at least
So
if
I walked
work
into a dressing room now and I was like, oh, look at what this guy said to me, and I said, it's ridiculous. And I'm like, no, it's not going to happen. It's never going to happen. It's never going to happen because you do not want to highlight somebody making fun of you. Right?
But you're all getting it though. You can present a united front.
But I go to the point, it's like, this scenario is like, you just signed a contract and I've signed a contract, but I don't know what you're on and you don't know what I'm on, but we're both thinking the same thing. You just don't speak about it. It's just an unwritten rule. You just don't speak about it. You're trying to guess and I'm trying to guess and I'm trying to gauge where you're at, but it's just, you don't speak about it.
So, like, although you wouldn't walk in a dressing room and talk about it, because seems like that's the culture in football.
Yeah.
There will be current players who will listen to this episode because they're on the receiving end of this and they're wondering how they can deal with it. What would you say to them?
Try and learn from my experience and try and learn from the things that I've said and question yourself, like, am I all right? Like, am I doing all right? Is that affecting my football? Is the other side of the game affecting my football? And if it is, then it's obviously going to have a huge effect on your football and your career. So you need to sort that out before you try and get it right on the pitch. And understand. I think understanding who you are as a person is huge. Like, what values do you bring to your family, to the team, to the manager? Like, what is your purpose within that squad? Like, what have you been bought for to come into the team and do? What is your purpose of home? What is your purpose in life? And really understand, stripping it all back and understanding who you are and where you want to get to and the challenges you're going to face. And I think once you can accept who you are and what you've become and where you are as a person, then you can go on to try and achieve those things and navigate yourself through the tough times. Until you accept, it's all an acceptance thing, and until you accept that you are struggling it's just a revolving door.
And that is the answer of someone who's had quite a lot of work and discussed at great length with someone, the mental state that they were in. Because most people would have gone, well, come off social media.
Yeah.
But that doesn't solve the problem.
No, it doesn't. No.
What solves the problem is realising that when you were injured, that didn't make you less of a footballer or less of a man. When you weren't able to pick your kids up or play with them at the park, you weren't less of a dad because you couldn't do that. You weren't less of a teammate. And the criticism that came your way and the sort of mocking and the abuse on social media, it wasn't about you. Do you know what I mean? It was never about you. It was always about them. Yeah. It was always about the people that felt better for sending you that.
Of course it is, yeah.
So what's your purpose now then?
To be a good dad, to be there for, and I've loved being there for my kids a lot more now that I've had more time. I've enjoyed that, watching them grow up. It's been great. Spending more time with your wife and your family, because you don't get that as a footballer. You're away for Christmases, birthdays, you miss all the great. And again, people go back to the narrative and say you get paid a lot of money, but a lot of money can't get back the time that you missed X or you missed this Christmas with your kids or whatever. So for me now, it's about embracing them moments. I want a challenge. I love a challenge. I'm passionate. I'm driven. I don't take no for an answer now. I'm humble. I don't take myself too seriously. I never will. But I love the pressure now. I love being under pressure. It's taught me to work and live under pressure, and I'm constantly under pressure. And as a footballer, you were constantly under pressure. People are scrutinising you, especially at Man United. It's magnified by tenfold. You see it in the media now. As soon as something makes a mistake or United lose, it's bang, everybody's onto United because United have so much history and DNA. But for me now, it's about where do I want to get to in my next step. Ultimately, I want to go into management. I feel like I've played on too many good managers to not put that into use. I've played with so many good players. I've learnt so many valuable lessons along the way from different people. And I want to put it to use. I love the game. I love being involved in the game. I love watching players develop, whether it's at United, coming through United, or whether it's Liverpool, or coming through at Liverpool. I love watching young players come through because I've been there and I know what it takes to be in their shoes, and even more so now than it was for me back then, because it's so much harder now. And I want to test myself. I'm ambitious, and I'd like to think that fast forward myself in 5-6 years' time that I'm in a job and being able to put that to use.
Let's talk then about the lessons you learned from the people you played with and played under. First of all, from a management perspective, I'm particularly interested in the period where it wasn't great for you, right, because of injuries, because I think you can judge people a lot in those situations. Which manager do you feel really understood you and dealt properly with the situation you were in? And which manager do you reflect on and think you really didn't quite get what was going on there?
Sir Alex Ferguson, obviously, I spoke about that before, of how he just knew everybody. He knew everybody's family, where they were eating that night, in so much detail, that his man-management skills, like I remember being out injured for the game against, I was being out injured, and he came to me in the canteen, and he put his arm around him. He said, "Come on, I want a word with you." And he said to me, "In 3 weeks' time," I said, I was thinking, 3 weeks' time? 3 weeks' time, you're going to start right back against Wigan. He knew his team. 3 weeks, there's 5 games before that game. And lo and behold, I started the game at right back. And it was actually the game we got beat 1-0 where Sean Maloney played a 1-2 and bent it around the far corner. So he was brilliant at man management. Like his man management skills were like no other. So he understood me as a player. I think the other one that sticks out in my mind was Mourinho, Jose. And at times I wasn't starting under him straight away. He needed to see what I was about and who was a player and this person that everybody's talked about. First thing he said to me was like, "You fit?" I was like, "Yeah." And he really got, and I tell you what, I think other than Sir Alex Ferguson era, I played my best football under Jose Mourinho. I really did.
What did he do?
He just got me and he understood how to manage me. And he partnered me up with Marcus Rocco, who was an absolute animal, by the way. Like, animal. You would not want to meet him in the back street. And I think I'm going to quote this, but I don't think it might be give or take. But I think we played 21 games together. I think we had like 16 clean sheets. I can't remember the amount of games, but we had like so many clean sheets and we were just on such a roll. And Mourinho was that guy that if I had a problem, like I would play for, like you, not that you wouldn't play for, of course I would, but like you'd try even harder to be fit for. And I just played well under him. And I know some people have had different experiences. And listen, everybody doesn't get along with everybody. Everybody's going to have relationships where you're not keen on that person. That's just life. Like, that's life. But he was just person. I remember played one game at home in the Premier League, and then it was the cup game at the weekend. We was playing, I can't remember who was playing, Reading. He was playing Reading, and he texted me that night and said, "Well done today. Go out for food tonight. Take your wife out for dinner and have a few drinks. I don't need you at the weekend. See you Monday." So I was like, that's brilliant. Like Jose Mourinho's texted you and said that. Like he just knew that maybe 2 games in a week wasn't right for me. He knew that he needed me. I needed him. And it was just sort of that relationship you understood. And for that period of time, like I always say, it's one of the best footballing periods I played. And then funny enough, someone actually pulled out the squad. And I'd had 3 or 4 pints, which I never do because I'm not a drinker at all. Never have been. And then he called me, someone texted me that night saying they need you in the squad for the next morning. I'm like, you gotta be joking. I've just had 3 pints, like 3 or 4 pints, which was way more than I would ever have. And then lo and behold, after 5 minutes, Marcus Rocco came off and I'm on the pitch, played 85 minutes, played unbelievable.
There's this lesson.
But it's that. For me, that scenario is just letting go of everything, and you just don't care. You've had 3 pints, so what? You got a job to do, go and do it. And it's just having that realisation in your head that just don't worry about everything else. Don't worry about what you're doing or what people are thinking. Just go and do it. Yeah. Just go and do what you do best.
It takes you back to those Blackburn days.
It takes you back to the Blackburn day where you don't know any different. You play the game, you get back home, you think, right, I want a little 5-a-side game with my mates.
What about Ralf Rangnick?
Difficult. I was obviously been out injured for a while, and I was at the point where I was back fit and training well, trying so hard to get back into the team. And perhaps it was that time where I needed to be managed in my training load, but wasn't for my own purpose really, because I wanted to train and show him that I was good enough to play. So I probably trained too much with what was going on with my knee. And then it was the game against Wolves where came back, played really well in, and I remember the analysis guy who's been there a while and know him really well, he came to me before the game and said that the manager's just asked for a few clips of previous games. I'm thinking, why? Like, I've played for Man United for 12 years, played over 200 odd games in different competitions and international level, and I didn't understand why he wanted to see clips of somebody who's been at the club for 10, 12 years. And I played that game, played really well. And obviously it was the emotional game that we spoke about before. And I came off the pitch. And I think it was that game as well that I walked off the pitch. And even though I'd played really well and I was back, I knew. I got into the dressing room after the game, and I was emotional, but obviously didn't let the lads see that in the dressing room. You have to be big and brave, of course. And I remember put the towel over my head, and everyone's like high fiving you, like even though we lost 1-0, was like, Jonah, brilliant, like so pleased for you, so happy for you. But I couldn't accept it because I knew in my head that my time was coming to an end, and that was hard to process in my head. It was hard to take because I love football. It's all I've ever known as a kid. I just want to play football. I want to give as much as I can. And I knew that even during the game, it was adrenaline that got me through the game more than anything. I was still feeling every pass, I was feeling it. And at that moment, I knew that the operation that I'd had sort of coming to sort of an end, and I just knew I knew the end was near. And it was, as a footballer, as any footballer will tell you, whether they've gone through my career or different journeys or whatever, it's tough to let go. It's tough to let go.
Why do you think Ralf wanted those clips? What was that about?
To see what I was like as a player, or to see, I don't know, how I pass the ball, how I move, how moments in the game where I don't know. I generally don't know to this day, but I can only assume he wanted to know what I was like because he'd not seen me play.
But sometimes I feel like, again, watching from the stands, you watch decisions of managers that are baffling on a man management level. And the one that springs to mind in relation to you is that game against Liverpool at Anfield, where you get thrown in, having not played for a while, with the intensity of going to Anfield on a Monday night, and then dragged off at half time.
Do you know what? I've never lost my head in a dressing room, and I've never been emotional enough to lose myself in a dressing room. And I think that's the only time in my career that I completely lost it. I was absolutely raging that he humiliated me in front of an Anfield crowd, first and foremost, our fearsome rivals, and the fans and my family and the players. Again, it was a game that we're 2-0 down at half time. Weren't great. I don't think we had a shot on target in the first half. It was a period where I was going through where nothing was coming off. We was under so much scrutiny and pressure, and I'd actually done all right in the game, considering where I've been and what I'd been going through with knee and injury-wise. I tell you what, I'll look back at the game and I'll highlight anything with any analyst guy and say, well, I didn't give the ball away, I was calm under pressure, I was aggressive when I needed to be, and I did. I'm not saying I was exceptional because I wasn't, but I definitely didn't deserve to come off at half time. There was far worse players on the pitch than me that day, and I didn't deserve to come off. But again, I'm the easiest one to pull off because you've not played in 12 months, and it's easy. You're an easy scapegoat, and it's the reason why we didn't perform well and we're 2-0 down at half time was because maybe Phil was coming back from an injury, and it's tough for him to deal with. And I just, at half time, I remember Ralf came in and said, right, I'm going to make a change. Phil's going to come off, and I remember the whole dressing room. I kid you not, the whole dressing room just went like as if to say, "Is he bringing Phil off here?" And I'll never forget that moment in the dressing room. And I know what everyone was thinking. And I took my boots off and I slammed them on the floor and I said, "You're taking the," that's not me. And then everyone was saying like, "Calm down, calm down." And I get irate now because I'm so like it really got to me. And I remember getting in the shower, thinking, right, I remember ringing my agent, ringing my wife, and thinking like, I'm in the shower at half time at Anfield. I've been dragged off for an unknown reason. I could understand, by the way, if I've not been good enough, I'll be the first person to hold my hand up and say, you know what, I deserve that. And I wouldn't say a word. I'd just get on with it and deal with it. But I remember being in the shower, ringing people, and I'm like, what is going on? Like, has this actually happened? Have I been brought off at half time here? And I just couldn't get my head around it, and I completely lost my head. And, I apologised afterwards, and I said that, it was out of character from me, and I shouldn't have done that. And, at that moment, that's not what was needed in the dressing room. But you can understand from my frustration that I was pretty peeved off.
When Erik Ten Hag came in, were you still at a point there in your career where you would have gone to him and gone, I'm going to get fit, I'm going to be here?
I'll paint the scenario. So I came back from holiday, and I remember being on holiday. I remember saying to my wife, like, it's got to have good gym. We need to go here. No, I'm not going there because it's got to have this whatever, cryotherapy, I need this for my knee when I get there. Like the amount of times we changed holiday destinations just so I could specifically have the needs that I needed, a pitch or whatever, a ball. And we was away at the time. I came back, first day, really excited. Erik come in, fresh start. You're out on the grass. You got your kit on, the boots on again. I was feeling my knee a little bit, but I thought, again, you just think, well, look, it's got to go away at some point. It's not just going to stay there forever. I remember just doing a little patterns of a drill around like a circuit. So you'd play the ball, pass it into a net, jog round through the cones, and just a little warm up. And I kid you not, I couldn't pass the ball with my right foot. I couldn't pass the ball. Just a little soft pass. I couldn't pass the ball, and I just honestly, I wanted the world. I wanted the world just to swallow me up, because I'm thinking, this manager's coming in, and I can't go in now. I can't go in from training 20 minutes into the session. And I got through the session, right? I'm not joking. I was passing the ball with the outside of my left foot. And like, I actually got quite good with my left foot, believe it or not. Like, I was really good player with my left foot, like, especially in training. Like, I used to try and play a lot left-footed in training. And like, the lads used to have a laugh and a joke in training that like, your left foot is actually unbelievable. And I know like people would listen to this now and think, yeah, good one. Like, but I was actually technically really good with my left foot because I had to be better. So I played left footed throughout the whole training session, just passed it to the outside of my left foot. And I remember I did this turn or sprint, and I just felt it, and I was like, oh my God, like I can't carry on. I can't carry on. And I remember I had a drinks break. I came over to the physio, and my words were, this is my last training session. And he was like, yeah, okay, whatever. And to this day, it was my last training session. Done.
How did that feel, saying that?
I was ready for it.
Yeah.
I was ready for it. Like it was a relief off my shoulders that I didn't have to put myself through this pain in my knee, not physically, not mentally, but pain in my knee. I didn't have to put myself through that anymore. And it was a relief off my shoulders, a weight off my shoulders, knowing that I'd committed to that answer, and I'd been putting it off for a while, like back home, my family and your agent, and you're thinking, they don't really know what's happening in your head, but they're treading on eggshells because they don't really want to ask you the dreaded question, is that you done, or are you retired? And I remember it took me, I was doing a radio the other day, and I think it's the first time someone said, are you retired? And I've said yes, because I never actually officially came out, because I didn't really want to. I always feel like when you say you're retired, it's like, all right, that's it, finished, done, see you later, thanks for coming. Where it's not like that for me. I've still got so much to give. But it was a relief. Honestly, it was a relief. And I got in the car, and I remember being in tears on the car on the way back. And I walked into the door, and my wife was like she just knew.
And did it feel like a grieving process then, from finishing as a player to now setting off on this new journey?
So I think after I finished, well, I knew I finished, even though media and fans probably didn't understand. It took me a while to watch football because I'd be bitter about it. And again, anyone who knows me is like, I'll back my team. I'll back the players who are playing in my position, no problem, every single day of the week, because that's the team that managers chose. But I'd look at games. I'm not just talking about United. I'd look at games and around the world, and I'd look and I think, I'm better than that. I'm better than that. Like, people are raving about him. Like I know I was better than that, but I couldn't show it. I just couldn't show enough of it. And I couldn't watch football. For 6 months, I didn't watch. For 3 or 4 months, I didn't watch football. And like, your mates would come round to the house, and I'd be like, don't switch to football, I'm not interested.
Amazing. We're about to go to our quickfire questions, but I suppose the final question before we do these quickfires is, how do you want football fans to remember you?
That I was brave, and I gave everything to the cause, and any badge that I wore, I respected and wore with pride. I loved playing football. I was honest. I was tough. And ultimately, I thought I was a good player, and I want fans to think that he was a good professional, a good player, who was unlucky at times, but had a good career, and hopefully has got a lot to give on the other side of the game.
Brilliant. Right, quickfire questions. From your amazing career and all the people you met and the things that you learned, what do you now believe are the 3 most important non-negotiable behaviours that really make a difference in life?
Honest, humble, and transparency.
What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given, and why?
to control the things that you can control. Don't worry about the things that are out of your control because you can't influence them. You know, you could be 1-0 down after 2 minutes, so what? Deal with it, get on with it. And just control the things you can control.
Brilliant. What's your biggest strength? What's your greatest weakness?
I think my mentality now to deal with aspects of just my life and on the football side, I've got such a great mentality to deal with everything, to deal with whatever's thrown at me now. I know how to cope with it and deal with it, and I think that it just gives me so much drive knowing I have those tools now to deal with all the things we spoke about, to take that into the next step in my career.
If you could go back to one moment of your life, what would it be and why?
The birth of my children. Because I know people probably think, oh, he's going to say a football question here, but the birth of my children was the best thing. And then winning the Premier League was incredible. And then I think the other one to add another one to that category would be to make my appearance for England in the World Cup, to represent your country, to sing that national anthem at the World Cup was, never forget that.
And the final message you'd like to leave people with, having listened to this amazing conversation, I suppose your one golden rule, if you like, for living a high-performance life?
To trust the process. Everyone says it, but trust the process. Back yourself. Don't ever doubt yourself. You're always good enough for somebody, and don't doubt yourself. Move forward. Always move forward.
Brilliant. And it is a real pleasure to understand the real story behind everything that we've seen and read over the last decade or more, and to have you sit here in such a great place, able to speak so eloquently about the challenges, but understand yourself better than ever and understand human beings better than ever, I think is a testament to you as a person.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Phil.
Thanks.
Thanks, mate.